Lounge brought to you by Travefy, the most trusted platform for travel professionals, powering over 30,000 travel brands worldwide. Here, we dive into the stories and insights of travel industry experts to help you stay ahead of the curve. And I'm Stephanie Grice, and today's guest is Kate Thomas, who's founder of Travel Pro Theory and supplier and owner of North and Leisure. So, welcome to the Lounge, Kate, and thanks for joining us today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited too. It's been so much fun chatting with you and getting to know you. And then today's topic on sales data galore. What a great episode.
I'm so excited. It's going to be great.
I know it's going to be so good. But before we dive into all the crunching the numbers and figuring out, all the good stuff to make your business thrive, can you just share a little bit more about yourself and how did you find yourself in the travel industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got started in travel, gosh, it was about 2008. And then in 2009, got actually into the luxury sector where I sort of stayed. So I worked for a company, a tour operator that was doing Ireland and UK, and then eventually went out on my own. And so I founded North and Leisure that launched in 2013. And so I've always sort of been on the supplier side of the business when it comes to selling travel. And then later, I went on and co-founded Travel Pro Theory in 2018. And so we provide resources and all sorts of good stuff for travel pros. Like I like to say, we take the pain out of growth, making things a little bit easier along the way. So wherever we can kind of reduce friction in your workday, in your workflow, that's what we're here to help with.
That's awesome. That's really cool. And that's why we had to have you on here. And I know like when we were talking about like what topics and so many good topics, but this one really stuck out to me on data because this is just something we just don't really talk about. And it is so, so important. And I know like we were saying before, I'm like, I'm not really a numbers person. I'm sure many are not, but
Yeah.
it's okay. Like, what is your story? Like, I know that I'm sure you work with many advisors who also are not big numbers people. So like, how do you help them? What do you say? Like,
Yeah. So I am a numbers nerd. I love a good spreadsheet. And I know that the minute I say spreadsheet or numbers or math, people go running for the hills. And fair enough, like you got in this career to sell travel, to put fun trips together, to work with your clients. And this is just like a whole other space of the business. You like, maybe I didn't sign up to like deep dive and track every single number along the way. But I really encourage people to get started. It's easier than you think once you kind of get set up and you just build it into your workflow. So this isn't something you have to pour tons of time into once you get going. It's as simple as, okay, this person actually became a client, they paid a deposit. We're going to enter in a little bit of information and then boom, you have that saved for later. And then you can start taking some of the emotion out of the decisions for your business, which I think makes it extremely helpful. The numbers don't lie. You have that in front of you. And then you can see like what part of my business are actually the most profitable? Where do I need to focus more? How do I build up my marketing? So if you have ever just sat down and thought, I don't know what I should be posting. I don't know what I should be putting in my newsletter. I don't know what I should be, how do I get more clients to go here? The numbers actually set you up for success in that way once you start tracking, when you can look and say, these destinations are actually the most profitable for me. These suppliers are where I'm making the most money on these trips. This is where you can then work backwards, focus your marketing, and start getting more of the stuff that is easier, feels good, and makes more money.
and hey, nothing wrong with that. That is, I love that you pointed out it takes the emotion out of it because that is a tough thing in all jobs. Like there's always, there's that one task or that one thing that you just really hold on to, but it's probably actually not being very efficient or the ROI is not really there. And
Yeah.
so like what do you recommend to start tracking? Like what does that look like when you're starting to realize, like can you give some examples of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So honestly, I just start simple, like use a Google Sheet, use Excel, what you have, it's free, it's there, it's available to you. And if you want to start in the most simple way, really just keeping track of like each sale as it comes through. So keeping track of the total sale number, what you charged in a fee, and what commission you made on that trip. And then over time, as that like sheet starts to fill in, then you can start really like adding layers into that. So that could be, what's the average commission I'm making per trip? How many trips am I sending to this destination year on year? I really like to track that average number, like this is the average sale or this is the average revenue per trip, like per trip, per person. And with that information, suddenly it's like, okay, well, maybe that's actually my minimum budget. I don't really do trips under that amount anymore. Or now that I know my average commission, I can kind of forecast out how much I'm going to be making for the next few months and what that's going to look like and have a better projection of your revenue. And then once you're really ready to like get nitty gritty, you can start filtering down by all sorts of things: destination, supplier, where your lead came from, right? Like, was that from a website? Was it a referral? Is it new or repeat? When travel month, what month was it booked? And suddenly you can you can build it out, but not to overwhelm people. Start with the basics. Literally just, if you go into a spreadsheet and create a like, this is the client, this is where they're going, this was how many nights, how many people, total sale, this is the fee I charged, this is the commission I made. You can do a lot with that information, like pretty easily within a spreadsheet.
Yeah, that is really cool. And honestly, that is pretty simple. I mean, you're just putting in like the stuff you already know. That's not, you don't have to go digging for it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, you don't have to dig any further. And like a lot of your tools, you're already kind of doing this, right? Like if you're a Travefy user, you probably are making use of where you could tag things by certain status. So you could have like, okay, this is a lead. This, like, once it moves from that proposal to an itinerary, then you could say, okay, that closed. They paid the fee. Time to go enter that information into this sheet. And it could take 30 seconds, super easy to implement. And really over time, like that's the easiest way to get started. And over time, you're going to look and like, wow, I actually have a lot of information here to work with and build from when it's time to start like actually digging into those numbers.
that is really cool. I mean, that's really powerful too, to be able to go look at your numbers over time and make those smart decisions. Because, like you said, when it comes to marketing, so what would that look like? Like, if you're reviewing your marketing and you're like, how, like, an example of how you could look at your data to determine where do you spend your marketing at?
Yeah, so like here's a real life example of how I use this like in North and Leisure in the early days. So when I first started out, I was just selling Ireland and slowly added in like all of UK, right? But I was a new supplier. I was a new DMC and and I sell to travel advisors. So it takes a long time to build up that clientele, build up that trust, right? Because you're getting that first wave of clients and it really takes like for their trips to have gone through and traveled and for them to have had a good experience before they start telling people about you. So it's a little bit of a slow burn. And there's a lot more competition as far as like on the DMC supplier side there's a lot more companies selling Ireland, selling UK. So I added in my second year, was in 2014, I added in Atlantic Canada, which is like Nova Scotia, PEI, Newfoundland, New Brunswick, because it's very similar travel style, but it's over here. And more importantly, there was not much competition there. So I was sort of not the only one, but like one of the few that was like handling full service FIT there. So I did that for a couple years, and marketing wise, that was a way for me to get in, build a relationship, and then they could come back to me with trips to Ireland or UK. Once I got built up, I was able to look back, look at those numbers, and it kind of matched with what I was feeling was with like Atlantic Canada, absolutely love it. Great place to travel. So inexpensive. It is so inexpensive to go there. And it was the same amount of work, or actually more, because not everything there was as trade friendly to enact those trips, to put them together and follow them through. So they were not profitable in the same way. So I could actually go back and look and say, okay, let me think for the year ahead what I need to be like planning out marketing wise. What do I want to talk about more? And I was like, wow, I did this number of Atlantic Canada trips and it's only making this much compared to the same amount of, Ireland, UK trips. And the profit margin there was a lot more just because they're a higher cost trip overall. And so I phased it out. And that was fully based on that. Like when earlier I said you take the emotions out of that decision, it wasn't an emotional decision for me at all to kind of like, okay, this actually isn't serving my business anymore. I've hit my max on what I could take on. So this needs to go so I could take on more of this stuff that is actually more profitable for my business. So I phased it out and I moved it to a fee instead of a full service trip. So for a while, I still offered and still was able to profit off of my knowledge base being up to date on it, and would just do like a consultation for a flat fee, create your itinerary, send you off with it, you could book, and then eventually like fully phased it out all the way. So that's where it's like you can look and see overall, like, hey, yes, I love this area. Yeah, I love planning trips to it. Is it serving my business long term? And it wasn't. So I had to like make that decision and cut it and phase it out. And it was easy and not overwrought or sad to let it go. It was like, it's time. It was time to let it go.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, it's so, and that's, I think, the struggle too, whether you're starting, because I know like a lot of advisors when they're starting, they'll kind of just take anything because you really are trying to learn and figure it out. And that's a great way, like to start fresh like that and start to look back and be like, oh yeah, that does not work for me. Or you make that shift, like how you said, how you can look and say, well, if I added this fee, it makes it a little bit more reasonable. So then you can see the bottom line really.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many ways to plan it out in your marketing, right? And even marketing, like saying marketing, sometimes if you're newer, that feels overwhelming. Like, what do you mean? It's just the thing, whatever, when you look at some of your numbers and you're like, okay, this is what's been selling well. All things are going well here, right? Like I have a solid supplier partner in place. It's easy to work with them. It's profitable. Then that's the thing you start talking about the most. Talk about it more than any of your other services. Focus that in all of your emails or your social media, anywhere you're showing up. Start talking about that. That's going to be start being the thing that you become known for. And then you start getting more of business to like more new clients for that thing that you're selling that actually is like more profitable and easier for you.
Yeah, that's really cool. And something I just thought of too is, do you also track like your spending? So like your spending for marketing or even using tools like Travify, like how does that play into it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do track it. I keep it a little bit separate and keep just a track of like, yeah, what am I spending on each month and how does that kind of look over the course of the year? And one of the bigger spends, because I think it's easier for us most of the time to factor in, okay, I'm spending this much on Travify or and this much on Travel Joy per month. And some of these like basic tools that everyone needs to use. But then you're like, can I afford this fam? Does this make sense for me to spend money to travel here this time of year? That's also where I can, yeah, help build in where you can kind of see your expenses over the year, but then looking at like your forecast and your revenue coming in, and also looking at your data to say, you know what, I want to sell more of this destination. And I know I can't do it until I get there. So this is where I'm going to focus, like saving some budget up for that so that I can go here in this year. And I see that I have this many commissions due over these few months. So I know I'll be able to like easily afford and go there without it being a stretch. So yeah, that definitely like factors into it too as you go. Or even like saving up for not even necessarily that it would be a save, but like planning out for conferences. Most of them have a set number, like you need a certain amount of sales to that destination to be invited on some of the conferences. So you got to keep track of that. And this is an easy way to see like, am I on track to go to this event that I really want to be invited to in the next year or two?
Are you ready to take your travel business to new heights? Join the 30,000 travel brands who trust Travify to streamline their business and deliver unforgettable experiences. With Travify, you'll create beautiful trips, manage bookings, and keep every detail organized, all in one powerful platform. Plus, you can start with a free trial to see how it fits your needs. Sign up today at Travify.com and make managing your travel business easier than ever. Discover why thousands of professionals rely on Travify.
So yeah, you would be able to like answer those types of questions just so quickly and easily without working too hard about it. I mean, that happens on the supplier side too. It's like if you're reaching out to a new property, trying to like establish a relationship and get a contract, a lot of times one of the questions is like, how much business are you sending into this destination or this city? How many room nights are you sending to Dublin each year? And you don't want to have to like go back and figure that out before you can reply.
Yeah. Well, something else I just thought of is what about people who do have to use like commission tracking software like with their host agencies and stuff?
Yeah.
I could see, even though I'm not as familiar with what some of them might be like, I would
Yeah.
see that you still probably need what you're talking about, right? Because you would still have the ability to break down the nights, how many people, destination, which you can't really do in a lot of them.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like you where I'm familiar with some of them. I've seen some of them, but like I'm not fully in depth, but mostly from what I've seen, like they're great. Yes, great at tracking like your total commission or even maybe a little bit more breaking down by that, but it's not like a full picture
Hmm.
reporting of your business and what that actually looks like um long term. And these things are also super helpful like if you go to outsource at any point in your business, the first questions that people are going to ask you is like, your target market, your key services, and those types of things. And if you're kind of selling everything at that point, there's nothing wrong with being a generalist, but you still need to give them points of focus for those messaging points, like if you hire someone to do your social media, they want to know what to talk about. Like, what are we pushing? What are we talking about this month? If you bring someone in to like do your website and write your copy for you, like, what are your key services? What are the things that you are really pushing? And you want those to line up with the stuff that, again, is like really driving revenue into your business and growing it in the way that you want it to grow. So I think it gives you more control over where I'm growing long term versus, okay, I'm just taking all the things and trying to keep up, right? It kind of goes from that frantic feeling to more of a, okay, I see where I'm at and this is where I want to go. And you can take the steps to get there.
I love that. Grow where you want to go. Like it's perfect.
Yeah.
And that's so true. And yeah, those and like those commission tracker things, like those cannot help you do marketing really. And like, like where do I put marketing efforts? And you're right, the outsourcing, that is getting really popular. And so that's a good point that if you have all that information, it's gonna be really easy for you to get somebody to start helping you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really even helps like with just vetting out your clients initially. Like one thing I like to do is at the end of the year is kind of take a look and then reevaluate anything that needs to change in my business. So that can look like, hey, what's the average number of nights for like what I sell, right? Like I can tell you like a North and Leisure client, like they're on average spending 9 nights in destination. That helps shape my marketing. Like what are the types of trips that I'm talking about? If I'm providing sample itineraries, what does that look like? When I'm providing training or education, like I have that type of stuff to pull from. Or anytime that like if you're struggling getting a lot of requests that are under budget, a lot of times it's just education, right? Like the average traveler, they don't have any idea what something should cost or does cost. But if you just put that out on your website, then they do. So you could say, hey, actually our starting budget is, X per person per night in this destination. And maybe it's not on your website, maybe it's something you keep when they reach out to you the first time, but it's like a nice handy guide that you're not spending time thinking like, is this possible? Can this be done? I can tell you, like on the supplier side, like as a DMC, I get those emails all day long where it's like, they have this amount and I don't have to think about it. I'm like, you know what? It costs about this much per person per night for this type of trip. So it's like either we have that or we got to come up to that or whatever that looks like. But there's not that time spent on, can this work? Is this possible? I'm not trying to put together a trip wondering if their budget would match. So it really helps with that vetting out clients up front because you could wrapping your marketing around that, your education, like when you're on the consult call with them, you can confidently say like, yep, I can tell you that for most of our clients, they spend this amount per day, or it's roughly this amount for the trip. And that can all come from your own data, like your own numbers based on what you've been selling.
Oh yeah. Well, it also makes you more confident to talk about things too, because you're like, listen, like you're not going to get a great trip out of this, like I know it. I have the data to tell you, like I know what my clients previously have done. So if you want the same experience, so that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, it really is. And it's like, again, it's not just, yeah, it's the confidence and the time savings because it's instead of getting on a call, finding out their budget, then having to turn around, reach out to suppliers or trying to put it together on your own, discovering whether that matches up, then going back to them days later and reopening that budget conversation. Instead, like, right off the bat, this is what it is. This is what we're looking for. Let me know. And then we can explore other options. Maybe that's a different destination. Maybe it's traveling off season, whatever that looks like. Maybe they have plenty of budget. It's like, actually, you know what? Like, let's get the most for your dollar here. I think we need to be going with private drivers here, private experiences here. And it just makes that selling process a lot easier and faster.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's super cool. No, okay, this is the $1 million question here is how do you get started with all this? Because I think this is incredible. I mean, like I just think it actually is fun. Like now the way you've explained it makes this data stuff really fun, I have to say. So how
Yes.
do you like get started? Do you just like open a new Google sheet and you're like, here we go?
Yes. Yeah. If you're starting from scratch and you just want to like build this out on your own, right? Yeah, fully open a new Google sheet and the basic information that you get on your intake form is kind of what you need to be tracking and then add in like the actual sale price. So what do I mean by that? Like when you have your intake form, someone's going to reach out to you, right? To set up a consult, they're interested, a new lead. They're giving you like their name, where they want to go, about how many number of nights, when they want to travel. So put those things into along the top of a Google sheet, add the sale price, your fee, if you charge a fee, the commission, and that alone will start really building things out. And without even doing really much extra manipulation at all, like you can easily sum each column to see your totals and use filters along that top row to it'll like let you filter. So you could select, like say Ireland or what have you, and it will automatically do it. You could do that without buying anything, without doing anything, without knowing much of anything. And then if you're ready for something else, there's like tracker tools out there. I have one, but I'll
Yeah.
but if like you don't have to spend anything to get started. You can absolutely just put it into a Google sheet and like start seeing what's there. Like you without having any specialized tool, as long as you start putting it in there, you're going to be able to actually kind of like you'll have a good understanding on a high level like what you're looking at as you go through.
Yeah, but honestly though, it's nice that people like you do have one that you can buy because I feel like for a lot of people, there's some people who want to just go and try it themselves, but then there's also people who are like, let's make this easy and I will just go buy it. So where could they, if they were interested in learn and like finding you, getting more information, like where would they go?
Yeah, so website is travelprotheory.com or Instagram is usually where you can find me. So feel free to hit me in the DMs at travelprotheory. I do have a tracker now, and we're actually working on an upgraded version of this. So probably by the time this podcast is out, that will be live sometime this fall. And that's going to look like an option where I put it in for you. So you don't have to deal with it. More of a done for you version. But more importantly, if you just want to get, like I said, if you wanted to get started on your own, you could create your own spreadsheet, super simple, and just get going in that way. But we have a freebie right now that's a revenue forecast freebie, a real basic spreadsheet template where you can kind of just to get an idea if you're trying to project your forecast for the year. So you're entering in like, what's my average commission, how much I'm charging a fee, and about how many trips I close a month or a quarter. And that's going to like calculate that all for you. So you can kind of play around with it and use it to see like, okay, where am I at now? What does this look like if I increase my fee by $100 this year? How would that change? And let's use like set some goals. So that one's totally free. So you can hit me up for that. I'm sure I'll send you a link for show notes and all that good stuff. But like, you can always just DM me and I'll send you. And you don't have to go looking.
Yeah, yeah, I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah,
That's so cool. And I love that how you mentioned like the fee thing. Like if you because sometimes if you do break it down, it's actually really crazy. And whether you want to do a fee or not, if you increase it just a little bit, like you could see a huge number at the end. Or there's people also who are like, I really don't want to charge a fee. Then you're like, okay, well then if you have to sell this many more trips, then it just takes like
yeah.
seriously, that's so cool. I love that.
Yeah, it's super easy. Like I said, that's on the revenue forecasting one, which is the freebie. That's so easy to play around with, and it's really there to help you, like just kind of see, like you said, play around and set some goals where it's like, okay, this is kind of how it's looking now. What would this look like if I either change my fee a little bit? What does that look like? All right, if I don't want to charge a fee, okay, how many more trips do I need to sell to get to that? And it kind of lets you plan and decide what's right for you, what's going to work for your business.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's so cool. I can't wait to put that in there. I will put all that in the show notes for sure. But any last things? Is there any last tips or advice that you would give people that are looking to finesse their business with data tracking?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the main tips is like, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to get started. You can't do it wrong just opening a spreadsheet and starting to put some stuff in. Truly. Even if you decide to later upgrade or outsource that, then you have a starting point, and that's always a great place to come from. So don't be afraid, and just start where you are. And then my next tip is once you've started, build it into your workflow. So this isn't something that you think about. The same way that, you have your steps of, okay, now they've set books. So I'm going to go into Travefy and go from proposal to itinerary. And that takes you a couple of seconds. This should also just take a couple of seconds to go put that information in. And you don't have to, you don't need to set aside days, a month to
Yeah.
get this done. It's super attainable. And yeah, don't be afraid. It's not scary. It's there to help you. It's just information, and it'll help you. It'll help. I think it takes help help take the fear out of decision making when you have that information in front of you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a good point too. Like, because I definitely would have thought, been like, oh man, I'm gonna have to take off whole day to do this one, like,
Yeah.
but no, it won't. And so that's really cool. Like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's easy. You can get started. Just start where you are. Start where you are. That's the
Hmm.
best advice. Just like, don't be afraid. Just hop in there and get something going.
Yeah, so start crunching those numbers and information. It's so cool. But also, we are not done yet, actually. I didn't tell you this, but we do rapid fire questions, just fun
Oh,
travel
okay.
questions for you.
Yeah, I'm
So,
ready.
okay. So, your first question here is what is your favorite travel movie?
Travel movie. Oh, there's so many good ones.
There's a lot.
I mean, it was a little bit of an intense movie, but I did like The Banshees of Inisheer, since that wasn't like
Oh, I
based
haven't
on an
seen that.
Ireland.
That's
Yeah,
an Ireland one.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's an Ireland one. So it was a good one. But like I said, a little intense, but it was fun. It was good.
That's cool. I was wondering, I was thinking about that. I was like, when I ask her these, there might be a lot of Ireland in here, which
There's
is awesome.
yeah, so
Love
many.
that. Well, because, okay, this question here is what is your favorite destination you've traveled to?
Oh, Ireland has my heart for sure. I mean, like I love Ireland, love UK, but like Ireland was that was like my first love in planning travel. When I went, I felt at home, and it felt meant to be. When I the way I got the job at the place I worked at first before I started on my own was I met someone at a 4th of July pool party. She told me what she did, and I said, I want to do what you do. And then I stalked them until they hired me. And then the next 4th of July, I was on my first flight to
Oh,
Ireland.
cool.
So it has always just felt like it's the place. It's like that's my fave by far.
It was meant to, yeah, that's really cool. And so a little flip on that question is what do you think is the most underrated destination to visit?
Oh, most underrated. Oh, that's a good question. I would say actually I'd put Atlantic Canada in there. It's so overlooked. People don't really think about it. And it's fairly easy-ish to get to depending on where you are in like if you're coming from the US. But it's absolutely gorgeous, and it's actually like as far as like landscape and kind of the vibe, very similar to Ireland or UK. but super, super affordable also. So if you're looking to like have a very easy family trip, road trip style destination, like you get there, you don't need a driver. It's so easy to get around. It's great.
That's really cool. That's awesome that, it's very similar because, yeah, it would be the climate and everything would be very similar, but yet it's actually, again, if you're coming from the US, it's actually kind of easy. That's
Yeah,
really
yeah,
cool.
yeah, it totally is. And you could see a lot of it like pretty simply. Like um Nova Scotia is the one I love. So if you fly into Halifax, give yourself a week or two, you'll love it. It's
That's
really great.
awesome. I like that. Well, another question here is what is the best meal that you've had while traveling?
Oh, there's so many. Um, I always think of this was also in that first trip to Ireland. I was eating at Patrick Gibo in Dublin. It's a two Michelin star, so of course, delicious. But in particular, their dessert they brought out, it was like a Guinness ice cream, and it was so good. So good. So I think about that often. I wish I had some.
I like that. Yeah. Again, it's so Ireland of you. I like it.
Yeah, it was
It's so good. No, that's awesome. So there's only two questions left. So the next one is, what is the last great book or article that you've read?
Oh, last great book or article. Gosh, there's been some good ones. Um, I'm trying to think. There was an article I read recently, and I'm totally blank. I think it was Travel Age West. Um, but it was talking about where people, speaking of the numbers, where people were in their business right now. And like it had the percentage of advisors that their business had grown in the last year, which mostly it had, and then the percentage of a few that like numbers had dropped in the last year. And I found as a numbers nerd, I was finding that extremely interesting because like I know on our side of things, like we experienced like a lot of growth this year. And so I was like curious to see where that kind of like met in the middle there.
Yeah.
Like
That's really interesting. Do you remember like what it was like? Like if it was a little
it was pretty like mostly growth. And I want to the number 39% is sticking out in my head, and I may be making that up. I'll find the article. I'll
we'll
send
have
it
to, yeah, I'll have to link it because I do feel like I remember seeing that too, but I can't remember.
yeah,
Yeah, shout out Travel Age West. Love them.
yeah, they're
Uh,
back.
really good stuff. So that's really cool. We'll have to find that and post that one. But okay, the last question for you here, this is a good one, is what is the craziest thing that's ever happened to you while traveling?
Oh, the craziest. Oh yeah, there's a lot, but my favorite one of my favorite memories, well, it probably is my favorite memory, and it was a little crazy, is like I was in Ireland. All my stories are Ireland, but like I was in Ireland, and it was my first trip there actually solo. So I was by myself. I just like launched. I was going to meet everybody, solidify all the contracts, do all the things. So I was there driving around by myself. It was off season. It was in October, and I was in West Cork, and I stopped in Glengariff. You could take a ferry over to Garnish Island, which is just a little garden island. It's like you could see it from the shore. It's a short ferry. And I hadn't initially planned to stop there, but the day got all thrown off from weather. And I decided I just called an audible, called the hotel, like, I'm going to be there a little bit later. I'm going to make this stop. So I stopped there and talked to the ferry guy. No one was there. They just took me over. I had the place to myself. They were like, okay, we'll come back in like an hour. And I just had this whole island to myself for like an hour. It was crazy and amazing. So yeah, that was one of my best and craziest experiences.
That's cool. What'd you do? Just like walk around?
Yeah, I just like walked around, took photos, enjoyed it, relaxed, and was like, that was kind of when I was like, okay, this is like, I'm in the right place. I'm in the right place at the right time. This is the thing for me. I'm doing the right thing.
That's so cool. Oh, that's really awesome. Like, what an experience. I like that.
It
That's
was.
so cool. Well, and I will also put in, I'll be sure to also put in, because I know we've been talking about Travel Pro Theory, but I'll put in the link for North and Leisure as well. So that way, if there's anyone listening who's interested,
Yeah.
Find Kate. You are a woman of many talents. It's very cool. Like,
Thank you.
so it's really cool, and I'm glad that we got to chat today. This was really a ton of fun. So awesome, and thank you everyone for tuning into this episode of The Lounge, powered by Travefy. And of course, a big thank you to our special guest Kate for joining us today. And if you joined our conversation, please be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and rate the podcast because it really does help. You can also catch all of our latest episodes on our YouTube channel. And don't forget to check out Travefy, the platform that's a travel advisor's best friend, I like to say, and sign up for a free trial at travefy.com. And you can use the discount code LOUNGE15 to save 15% off your first annual subscription. So thanks again for joining us, and stay safe, and we'll catch you on the next flight.